Now, as you saw in the last video, there's this thing called the consumption function, and the consumption function is simply C equals C0, some level of autonomous consumption, plus the marginal propensity to consume times income, or real GDP. Now, you probably noticed by now your book may state that this is disposable income. This is simply income minus taxes, and that's what we're focusing on now. Because of course, number one, we haven't brought in government yet, but number two, you can only spend the bottom line on your paycheck. You can't spend the top line, right? The top line is your gross income, then taxes come out, then your net income. So this is income net of taxes. Having said that, we graph this by saying that we have essentially real GDP on the horizontal axis, disposable income, and consumption expenditure on the vertical axis, okay? And if we didn't need any autonomous consumption and we spent every dollar we earned, we would have a 45-degree line, okay? And the consumption expenditure, however, because we have some level of positive autonomous consumption measured by this distance here, and MPC is less than 1 but greater than 0, we have a consumption function that looks like this, okay? This is C0 plus MPC times Y. Now, we indicated in the last video that, of course, an increase in Y shifts this curve up, a decrease in Y shifts this curve down. We're going to explore three other factors briefly. The real interest rate, R, okay? We already know that a change in R changes consumption, right? If real interest rates rise, the opportunity cost of consumption rises. In other words, you're going to be induced to save more money because you can make more money, right, in the real interest rate, okay? So if interest rates rise, consumption's going to fall. This curve is going to shift downward, okay? Now, what is this going to do? It is going to, of course, move our output level downward, okay? It's going to reduce GDP. Now, first thing I want to say to you, just if you notice in this lecture and the last one, this will become important later. Notice the size of change, the vertical distance between these two curves here. Then notice the horizontal distance or the horizontal change in GDP. We're going to see in later videos that this change is always less than this change. And there's a certain effect we call that, okay? We call that the multiplier effect. But again, we'll get into it later. But if you were just wondering why this changes by some amount and then GDP changes by a greater amount, we're already going to discuss that in later videos. Having said that, let's get back to changes in consumption. So we increase real interest rates, consumption falls. People save more money. You decrease real interest rates, consumption's going to rise because the opportunity cost of consumption has fallen, okay? And that, of course, increases output, okay? Now, another factor is wealth. So a change in wealth, okay? If you're wealthier, you're going to consume more. Consumption function is going to shift up. GDP is going to increase. If you find yourself to be less wealthy, you're going to reduce your consumption. Consumption function is going to shift down. GDP is going to decrease. And lastly, a change in expected future income, okay? So if you expect your future income to fall, okay, then you're going to consume less today. Consumption function is going to shift down, GDP is going to shrink. Okay, if you expect your future income to rise, okay, so you see the economy expanding, the economy's getting ready to do well, you expect some pay raises to come in the future, what are you going to do? You're going to pull some of that consumption forward, you're going to increase today's consumption, and GDP today is going to expand.